I'm going to go over some of the key numbers from the ADDM report. Overall, the autism is increasing in prevalence at an alarming rate. The study tests 8-year-olds who were born in 2014. And by the way, these studies are 2 years later than they should be. And one of the things that we're going to do as we move this function to the Administration for a Healthy America, to the chronic disease division, the new chronic disease division, is we are going to have updated real-time data so that people can look at this, so Americans can understand what is happening with chronic disease in this country in real time. And I'd have to wait 2 years to react. We don't wait 2 years to react to a measles epidemic, and we should not, or any kind of infectious disease. We shouldn't have to do that for diabetes or autism. The ASD prevalence rate in 8-year-olds is now 1 in 31. Shocking. There's an extreme risk for boys. Overall, the risk for boys of getting an autism diagnosis in this country is now 1 in 20. And as high in California, which has the best data collection. So it probably also reflects the national trend, 1 in 12.5 boys. This is part of an unrelenting upward trend. The prevalence 2 years ago was 1 in 36. Since the first ADDM report in 1990, which was 1992 births, autism has increased by a factor of 4.8. That's 480%, I believe. The first ADDM survey was 22 years ago when prevalence was 1 in 150 children. In all the core states, the trend is consistently upward, and most cases now are severe. So about 25% of the kids who are diagnosed with autism are nonverbal, non-toilet trained, and have other stereotypical features, head banging, tactile and light sensitivities, stimming, toe walking, etc. One of the things that I think that we need to move away from today is this ideology that the autism diagnosis, that the autism prevalence increases, the relentless increases, are simply artifacts of better diagnoses, better recognition, or changing diagnostic criteria. If you look at Table 3 of the ADDM report, it's clear that the rates are real, that they are increasing in the last 10 years, which is the beginning with the first one. Year by year, there is a steady, relentless increase. I want to, because this epidemic denial has become a feature in the mainstream media, and it's based on an industry canard. And obviously, there are people who don't want us to look at environmental exposures. And so I want to just read you some of the little excerpts from some of the older studies. The baseline for autism in this country was established with the largest epidemiological study in history, a study of all 900,000 children in the state of Wisconsin, children under the age of 12. They found 0.7 children had autism in every 10,000. That's less than 1 in 10,000. Today, we're at 1 in 31. That study also confirmed the 4-to-1 male-to-female ratio. There were, at that time, just over 60 children in Wisconsin with autism. And today, it's around 20,000. In 1987, out of every 1 million kids, 330 were diagnosed with autism. Today, there are 27,777 for every million. If you accept the epidemic denier's narrative, you have to believe that researchers in North Dakota missed 98.8% of the children with autism, that thousands of profoundly disabled children were somehow invisible to doctors, teachers, parents, and even their own study. The same researchers who followed the original cohort for 12 years to double check their number, they went back in 2000 and found that they had missed exactly 1 child. So doctors and therapists in the past were not stupid. They weren't missing all these cases. The epidemic is real. Between 1959 and 1965, researchers from 14 hospitals associated with major universities undertook the National Collaborative Perinatal Project, tracking 30,000 children from birth to age 8. This was no half-baked survey-based analysis. The study conducted 9 separate screenings covering neurology, psychology, speech, language, hearing, and visual function. Every developmental quirk, anomaly, and disorder was logged with painstaking detail. Autism, a condition characterized by profound impairments in social communication and behavior, would have stood out like a neon sign. There were 14 cases, that's 4.7 per 10,000. So we know what the historic numbers are, and we know what the numbers are today, and it's time for everybody to stop attributing this to this ideology of epidemic denial. In 2009, the California State Legislature charged the Mind Institute at UC Davis with because this myth was already becoming pervasive, the myth of epidemic denial was already becoming pervasive in the mainstream media. The California Legislature directed the Mind Institute at UC Davis to answer the question. And Irva Hertz-Pichota was a highly esteemed, revered scientist, neurology, and epidemiologist, came back with a definitive answer: the epidemic is real. Only a very, very small portion of it can be changed can be charged to better recognition or better diagnostic criteria. I want to say a couple of other things. There are many, many other studies that affirm this. And instead of listening to this canard of epidemic denial, all you have to do is start reading a little science, because the answer is very clear. And this is catastrophic for our country. There's a recent study by Blaxell et al. And a team of other researchers that said that the cost of treating autism in this country by 2035, so within 10 years, will be $1 trillion a year. This is added to already astronomical healthcare costs. And then there's an individual injury. These are kids this is a preventable disease. We know it's an environmental exposure. It has to be. Genes do not cause epidemics. They can provide a vulnerability. You need an environmental toxin. And Irva Hertz-Pichota pointed out that because of this mythology, that the amount of money and resources put into studying genetic causes, which is a dead end, has been historically 10 to 20 times the amount spent by NIH and other agencies to study environmental factors, to study exposures, to study external factors, and that's where we're going to find the answer. The thing, I referred to a number of studies. There are many, many, many others in the scientific literature that absolutely explode this mythology that this is, that the autism epidemic is not real. If you read the literature, it is absolutely indefensible to continue to promote this. But it doesn't take you to read the literature. It just takes a little common sense. If the epidemic is an artifact, a better diagnostic criteria or better recognition, then why are we not seeing it in older people? Why is this only happening in young people? I asked Walter before we came out here, I said, have you ever seen anybody our age? I'm 71 years old with full-blown autism, headbanging, nonverbal, non-toilet trained, stimming, toe walking, these other stereotypical features. Where are these people walking around the mall? You can't find them. They're not in homes. There are no homes for them. There are no institutions for them. Why are we seeing them on the street? Anybody can look around and see that this is a canard. And then you have to ask yourself, why is it so pervasive? Why has it been thrown up against us for so many years? And clearly there are industries. This is coming from an environmental toxin. And somebody made a profit by putting that environmental toxin into our air, our water, our medicines, our food. And it's to their benefit to say, to normalize it, to say, this is all normal, it's always been here. But that's not good for our country. And it's not good for the press to not be more inquisitive, to not be more skeptical. And within 3 weeks, and probably we're hoping in 2 weeks, we're going to announce a series of new studies to identify precisely what the environmental toxins are that are causing it. This has not been done before. And we're going to do it in a thorough and comprehensive way, and we're going to get back to with an answer to the American people very, very quickly.
Secretary Kennedy, Amanda Seitz with the Associated Press. Some of the CDC's own research has concluded that there's a genetic link at play with autism. Are you saying today that you don't trust that research or that it was wrong? Could you expand a little bit more on that?
No, there is. We have really good genetic markers now. and they provide a vulnerability. But those genetic markers alone are not going to dictate your destiny. You need an environmental toxin. I mean, there are many genetic markers that dictate the methylation capacity of the human body. Those contribute to, those dictate, listen, many people smoke cigarettes, and only 1 in 5 died from lung cancer. There were 4 of them that didn't. And those were the ones that had some circumstances, probably genetic, that made them more susceptible to it. And the same is true. We know that that glutathione production, and glutathione is an enzyme that helps the human body excrete metals and toxins. People with low glutathione production are more vulnerable. People with the MTHFR gene, which dictates methylation, are more vulnerable. People with high testosterone are more vulnerable. So there are a lot of genetic vulnerabilities. You need an environmental toxin.
Alex at Fox. Alex.
Hi, Alex Hoff, Fox News. In seeking out an environmental toxin, do you feel that if one or several are detected or put on your radar, do you think it would be the same one causing issues at both ends of the spectrum? Children who struggle with, let's say, sensory issues, all the way to those who are fully care dependent, unable to speak. Would it be the same catalyst in all of those varying conditions, you think?
Well, those are the kind of studies we're going to do. And you're right, there's a spectrum of injuries, and we don't know. There are studies that look at maternal activation, so that something happens in the womb. There are studies that look at other genetic causes. The issue that we know is genes don't cause epidemics. You need an environmental toxin, and we're going to look at all the potential culprits. We're going to look at mold. We're going to look at food additives. We're going to look at pesticides. We're going to look at air and water, and medicines. So we're going to look at ultrasound, because there's a timeline that something happened. In fact, Congress said to EPA, ordered EPA to tell us what year the autism epidemic began. The EPA scientists came back and said it happened in 1989. You have to find a toxin that became ubiquitous around that time period. And that affected every demographic, from Cubans in Key Biscayne to Inuit in Alaska. And that affects boys at a 4-to-1 ratio as girls. There's a limited universe of those, but actually it's quite large. And Herbert Hertz-Pichota was the one who suggested that one of the things we have to look at is ultrasound. I don't think that that's probably a factor, but it's one of the exposures that became ubiquitous during that period. And we're going to look at all of them agnostically. We're going to find the potential exposures that increased during that time period, and then we're going to see if there is a link to this injury.